Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Lynx Lounge. I'm your host, BTB, and have we got a real icon today that we are going to examine and observe, and that is the glorious Ms Pac Man for the Atari Lynx. Now, everybody knows the history and the importance of Pac-Man. Pac-Man gave us fever, but Ms Pac Man really stole our hearts. Is that cheesy enough for you? It's true. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this version of Ms Pac Man stacks up on the Atari Lynx. Are you looking for an almost perfect arcade conversion for Ms Pac Man to go? Well, it might just possibly be this cartridge right here. Let's check it out. But before we do that, I have my Pac-Man tie, my Pac-Man watch, and my Pac-Man telephone, and I am ready to walk down memory lane and play Ms Pac Man. You ready? Let's go! I shouldn't have to be the one to tell you how important Pac-Man is as far as the history of video games go. It was a gigantic hit. Pac-Man stuff was everywhere. There was Pac-Man merchandise, there was Pac-Man cereal, there was a cartoon, lunch pails, pretty much Pac-Man everything. I really feel like that was the start of the big video game boom. Now, obviously in the 70s, the late 70s I should say, Space Invaders really paved the way, but then we had a slew of space games. Everything was space. Space this, space that. You shoot aliens or you're shooting rocks, and it was all space. Pac-Man was very important because all of a sudden, now we have a character. We have ghosts that have names, and they're trying to get Pac-Man, and you gotta get out of their way, and then you get your power up, and then you can chase after them. And it was really innovative, and it was absolutely what we needed in the early 80s. So not only was Pac-Man a financial success, in fact it was a video game craze, it was nuts. It was also important in the realm of pushing the narrative forward. Now, how do you follow up with something like that? Well, you follow up with the sequel, Ms Pac Man. Some might say, hey, it's just Pac-Man with a bow, but if you really play it, there's a lot of differences, and they all make a lot of sense. In fact, given the choice to play Pac-Man or Ms Pac Man, I'm always going to play Ms Pac Man. There's something just so iconic about that powder blue and pink cabinet. How does the Atari Lynx version of Ms Pac Man stack up to the competition? Well, it's got some very, very good things, and it's got a couple of things that annoy me, but it might just be me. It might be a personal preference, but I'll give you my opinion as we go on. The graphics look pretty good. They're very colorful. All of the mazes are represented correctly as far as the layout goes. However, let me ask you this question. Why isn't this version of Ms Pac Man vertical? I mean, the screen layout in the traditional arcade cabinet is a vertical cab. Why didn't they do that here? They did that with some other Lynx games. This would have been perfect for that, and I don't understand why they didn't attempt to do Pac-Man like this. Even though the screen is not presented the way it should be presented as far as an arcade translation, it does get one thing very, very right. It shows the full maze. I have a full overview of the maze and where the ghosts are. In every single portable out there at the time, they opted for a zoomed in view, which means you only get to see about 1/4 to half of the maze. You don't know where the ghosts are on the top half. That's lame. I don't like it. Big score for the Lynx for a full screen view. To me, this version of Ms Pac Man on the Atari Lynx reminds me of the 5200 version of Pac Man. The ghosts don't have eyes, and I don't know why that bugs me, but just that little loss of detail, your charm and your quality goes down a notch. The sound is pretty much arcade perfect. Now, nothing really jumps out at me as far as it being incorrect or that sounds out of place. It all sounds like the arcade. So how does it control? Well, this is my next big nitpicky thing, I guess you could say. I don't think it controls that well. So if you take a look at this cross pad here, I feel like it's just a little bit too big for this game, and then there's another game as well that I feel that really this pad screws things up with. One of them is Ms Pac Man, and the other one is Ninja Gaiden 3. Two games that call for very precise movement, and this pad is just a little bit too big. So what happens is it takes a little bit longer to get from one side to the other. I know, weird, right? You wouldn't even think about that. It's responsive, but the pad is too big. However, if the pad was smaller, it would look weird on the unit. Let me give you an example. Here's an overview of some game pads. Now, some of them you may have played with and others you may not have played with. So you could see here that it is responsive, but there's a lot of play from this side to this side right here. The Nintendo controller, classic, it's very tight and very responsive from one side to the other. The same goes with this Atari Pad, which a lot of you have not played with because this was a European exclusive only, and you had to order these to get them. It's unfortunate that this didn't come packed with the system, but we will go over that on the 7800 Avenue. Now, another one of my all-time favorite pads is the Turbo Pad. I love the TurboGrafx 16. I always have. It's got turbo buttons, the buttons are responsive, and it's got a very, very tight feel in the pad. Very comfortable. This is not a very good pad whatsoever. It's actually one of my least favorites, and it's terrible. It has nubs on it that dig into your thumb, and it's very, very mushy. The buttons are very mushy, and it's got a very, very long throw from one side to the other. It is very, very similar to what's happening over here with the Lynx pad. Too much play from one side to the other. Same with the Sega. All of these three here are very tight and responsive. Something that this game absolutely calls for. Tight, responsive gameplay. So we just did a little pad breakdown there, and I hope you found that informative. I know I did. I learned a lot. It doesn't ruin the game for me. You have to get used to it. Now remember, the arcade had that little tiny ball top joystick. Very short throw, four-way joystick. And that was perfect for that game. You could beat that game up all day long and it would still be responsive. It's like any other video game system where, you really have to get used to the controls that you were given. And if you didn't like those controls, well, then you just go out and you get a third-party controller and you try that one out. If you didn't like that one, you try another one. You don't really have that luxury on this because this is what it is. Like I said, there's only 2 games in the library that I have found that this is a problem. Other than that, it's golden. So again, if you're collecting for the Atari Lynx, you have to ask yourself, do I need Ms Pac Man? And the answer is absolutely. You should have Ms Pac Man on 7800, you should have Ms Pac Man on 2600, you should have Ms Pac Man on your NES, and wherever else you can get it. Okay folks, that is it for me. I'm having some Sunny D right now and enjoying my weekend. I will see you on the next episode. Have a great one, guys. See ya.
Check out Atari.io for the very best in retro life and classic gaming. From Atari to Nintendo, Sega, TurboGrafx, and beyond. Atari.io.